They are an inspiration and a mystery. One of the most fascinating slices, we think, of the world's population. People who live to be 100 years or older and yet remain healthy, even vigorous. They're clearly doing something right. But what exactly? Researchers are slowly beginning to unravel why this elite group is off the charts when it comes not just to aging, but aging well, extraordinarily well. National Geographic devotes its cover story this month to the secrets of living longer. The issue is now on newsstands, and Dan Buettner, who wrote the story, will be joining us later to answer your calls and your emails. He visited 3 corners of the world where people live the longest to find out exactly what they're doing and what lessons they have to teach us. Tonight we'll take you around the globe, retracing Dan's path. Along the way, you'll meet some remarkable people. We're pretty sure they'll change everything you thought you knew about what it means to be old, very old. We begin in Loma Linda, California, of all places, home to some of the hardiest people in the United States. Here's CNN's Gary Tuckman.
Okay, ready?
I think so.
Marge Jatan renewed her driver's license in 2004. She was born in 1904.
So I always drive slowly because I can get more mileage to my gas that way. Didn't you know that?
I do know that. They're right. You're right.
Well, not very many men do.
Marge is now 101. Her license expires when she's 104.
Are you a good driver?
I think I am.
Marge also has another set of wheels, a stationary bicycle, which she uses for a daily 8-mile ride, which is then followed by a regimen of weightlifting, usually accompanied by some power walking in her neighborhood in Loma Linda, California.
Why do you walk so fast? You're gonna have a tough time having people keep up with you.
If somebody rings the bell and you gotta hurry. I've been a nurse for many years.
Okay.
Marge was married to a doctor for 77 years. James Jatan died 2.5 years ago at age 96. She has 2 children, 4 grandchildren, and 2 great-grandchildren. Marge grew up in Northern California and remembers the great 1906 San Francisco earthquake.
I was 2 years old, and I remembered that the water was splashing out of the horse trough. Wondered if they'd have anything left to drink.
So how is this 101-year-old woman maintain this amazing mental and physical condition?
In true righteousness and holiness.
Marge Jatan believes faith has much to do with it.
I'm a Seventh-day Adventist.
What then shall we say, brothers?
The Adventists, Christians who observe the Sabbath on Saturday, the 7th day of the week, preach good health. An Adventist is not supposed to drink, smoke, or eat many types of meat. Many Adventists don't eat any meat at all and refrain from coffee and soft drinks.
Our bodies are an important part of what it means to be children of God. We only have one while we're here.
Now suck it up.
Okay.
Surprise breath and stay surprised.
All right. Then my living shall not be in vain.
Minnie Iverson Wood is also a Seventh-day Adventist.
Suck it. That was a good one.
At the age of 97, she teaches voice and piano lessons.
If I can help somebody.
You're not going to hell.
And strictly observes the teachings of her religion.
When you are satisfied with what you're doing, you can relax and you can get a night's sleep. But if you're doing things that you shouldn't be doing, you lose sleep and you lose strength.
There are about 14 million Seventh-day Adventists in the world, and this congregation in Loma Linda is the church's largest. About 40% of the people who live in this city are Seventh-day Adventists.
And it appears they live longer than others. A National Institutes of Health study shows Seventh-day Adventists in California live 5 to 8 years longer than other Californians. That's why National Geographic magazine came here for the cover story titled The Secrets of Living Longer.
That religious-based sense of purpose, I think, gave them a enthusiasm for life, something that propelled them into their older years.
May your kingdom be established in our praises.
The Loma Linda congregation is full of elderly people. So are exercise classes held in the town.
I want to beat the retirement system, and the only way to beat it is to keep breathing.
Have we had enough?
And when you combine one's faith, one's community, along with a good, healthy diet and an exercise program, together, combined, can result in significant improvement of longevity.
Marge Jatan has one other quality that leads to longevity, a good sense of humor.
Not only do you not look 101, you don't look 91, you look about 81.
Well, keep talking.
Marge says it all comes back to faith and embracing every day.
How does it make you feel that you've reached this age and are in the shape you are, such a good shape?
I marvel at it.
Marge and Minnie are very inspirational women. It's very nice to do such an inspirational story. And here's a good addition to it. 101-year-old Marge does a lot of volunteer work at the hospital, at her church, and last night, a civic group in Southern California gave her the Philanthropist of the Year award. And I will tell you, Anderson, I would like, if 4 decades from now, I'm in a position to win some type of award.
she's remarkable. And I mean, to see her working out at 101 is just incredible. And she walks fast, you were saying.
She does a lot more than most of us.
Yeah, I know. I was watching her thinking, I really got to start going to the gym. This is really getting pathetic. I think she's lifting more weights than I can.
Surviving on faith. Why does this religious community live longer than the rest of us? Our series, Living Longer, Living Better. A new ABC News USA Today poll finds almost 2/3 of Americans say it's worth practicing moderation, exercising regularly, eating properly, avoiding alcohol and stress in order to live to 100. Tonight, ABC's Gigi Stone introduces us to a community in Loma Linda, California that believes it has found the answer.
Marge Jetton got her first car around the time cars were invented. At 101 years old, she's still behind the wheel. At 94, Marion Westermeyer is still perfecting his dive. And at 91, Dr. Ellsworth Wareham is visiting a patient he helped operate on last night. All are members of America's longest living community, the Seventh-day Adventists of California. The Adventist Church was born during an era of 19th century health reform. It has always preached and practiced a message of health. No smoking, no alcohol, no caffeine, no rich foods, and plenty of exercise like daily walks. But the real secret, members say, is their faith itself.
It could be that there's something about prayer, something about the hope that engenders, something about the social support that they get.
There have been several studies to back that up. One U.S. government-funded study found those who attend religious services regularly live an average of 8 years longer.
You never have enough time to do all the things you want to do.
That's right, because you're so slow, it's exasperating.
She just renewed her driver's license for another 5 years.
Put them up like this, like this, like this.
After all, she needs to be able to get to her daily workouts. Gigi Stone, ABC News, Loma Linda, California.
We're finished.
Amen.
There are about 1 million Adventists in the United States, and as many as 100,000 of them have been the subject of a number of long-term studies, supported mostly with federal funds, to understand why Adventists seem to enjoy a longer life expectancy.
Established that only about 10% of how long we live is dictated by our genes. The other 90% or so is dictated by our lifestyle.
Dan Buettner led a research project for National Geographic that turned into a best-selling book, The Blue Zones. It identified Loma Linda as one of a handful of locations around the world where people do in fact live longer and seemingly healthier lives.
I was in collaboration with the National Institute on Aging and some scientists out of Harvard. They put us in touch with the people who run the Adventist Health Study, which is a gold standard NIH-funded epidemiology study that follows tens of thousands of people for decades. And that study revealed that the Adventists who most strictly follow the suggestions of the church are living about a decade longer than their American counterpart.
It is pretty accepted now in the medical community, with all of the body of scientific research that has been looking at Adventists, that they live longer than their peers. They live longer than the people who are living in neighboring towns, and even people living next door to them. The initial studies of Adventists were looking at specific things in their lifestyle. They found that because they're vegetarian, they eat more nuts. So originally we were saying in the early 1990s, hey, let's all eat walnuts, let's all eat almonds, which is a good first step. But with the Adventists, it's much more holistic. It's their whole vegetarian lifestyle, which includes a lot of fruits, vegetables, and whole grains. But it's also beyond that. They believe it's a strong sense of community.
Well, I'm 98 years young. I am blessed because I have a church family.
I think we're content. I think contentment means a lot.
At age 100, Benita Wilbur still has a healthy mind, body, and spirit.
I've given myself to the Lord, and I've left myself in His hands, and I have trust, and I have been very, very well taken care of.
She's not alone. There's an unusually high concentration of centenarians in her hometown of Loma Linda, California. It's one of only 5 so-called blue zones worldwide, areas where people live the longest. The others are Okinawa, Japan, Korea, Greece, Sardinia, Italy, and Nicoya, Costa Rica. Loma Linda is an hour east of Los Angeles. About 250,000 people live here. The reason they're so healthy is because most of them are Seventh-day Adventists. On average, they live 10 years longer than most Americans. Dr. Larry Beeson has researched this phenomena for the last 50 years.
Adventists have approximately the same proportion of people who die of cancer, heart disease, or stroke, but the age that they get diagnosed is much later.
They strongly adhere to the belief of respecting the human body as a temple of the Holy Spirit. That means no alcohol, no tobacco, and following a plant-based diet.
In Christianity, we have the Holy Scriptures. What God said from the beginning, you should eat. He gave us the nuts and the grains and the herbs that He placed in the earth. And He said, you will do better if you subsist on that type of thing.
What has your diet been throughout your life?
Vegetables. My sister liked fruit. Well, I do too, but vegetables had priority, and I like them raw.
Many Adventists, like Benita, are total vegetarians. Others will eat a little dairy, while some occasionally consume fish, and there are those who eat small amounts of poultry and beef. These choices lead to different health outcomes.
The more flesh foods you eat, the more Alzheimer's, the more heart disease, the more cancer, the earlier the death occurs. Where going the other direction, as people move toward the removing flesh food from the diet, there tends to be a delay in the onset of the diseases.
Diet isn't the only factor in these longer lives. Seventh-day Adventists strictly observe the Sabbath. Every Saturday, they rest to recuperate from the week and recharge for the one ahead. Also, to spend time with friends, family, and God. Stuart Hardy, who pastors one of the world's largest congregations, says resting on the Sabbath includes abstaining from electronics.
Any of those things that kind of take you back into work, we try and avoid those things. Now, it's not like it's a rule, but when you think about it, if there's anything that you're involved in during the week, if you go back to that, then you're not really taking a break from it.
I feel that rest is one of the most important things in aging. That if you rest, then you can get up and gallop.
Medical research confirms stress kills.
Science has always kind of had some kind of tension with religion, particularly in contemporary society. So it's great to be able to read something in the scriptures They suggest what we should do, and then science is not only affirming it, but even giving us more specific understanding of why it benefits us so much.
Exercise is also a priority. Throughout her life, Benita was extremely active. Now she only has the strength to walk, which she does every day.
It is subsiding, and that's the way God had intended for people to be, and so I accept that too, even though I don't like it.
Adventists are able to stick to their healthy lifestyle because they're surrounded by others living the same way.
My mother used to keep us in the straight and narrow way by saying, now be careful with the company you keep.
So look to the Seventh-day Adventists who live an average of 10 years longer than the rest of us. They exercise and observe the Sabbath. They avoid alcohol, tobacco, and meat, all within a social network that reinforces that behavior. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
We begin a new series here on The Early Show called Secrets to a Longer Life, what you need to do to make it to 100. This morning, we celebrate the birthday of a man who's past the century mark and still going strong.
Very nice, very nice, if you got good health. Well, I was going to do some exercise.
So don't let the walker fool you. Fogarty is a spry centenarian. He adheres to a daily exercise routine which culminates with 15 minutes on a stationary bike. It's a pace that's remarkably uncommon.
1 out of 10,000 in this country will make it to age 100. In this country.
In fact, the average American is only expected to live until they're 78. That puts the United States at 23rd on a global list of longevity, a list topped by Japan, where people are likely to reach 82.
In Japan, the diet has remained fairly stable. It's low in carbohydrates, it's high in fish and omega-3 fatty acids, which are protective as antioxidants against cardiovascular disease and stroke and cancer.
There's more at work here, however, than a good diet.
There is a spirituality, a belief in some other greater being. And study after study has shown that that belief is associated with longevity.
Another spiritual community demonstrating longevity are the Seventh-day Adventists of Loma Linda, California, where members are living 4 to 10 years longer than the average Californian.
When we nurture that spirituality, it encourages in us a certain vibrancy.
And while most of us don't think we have a prayer at living so long, a recent study suggests otherwise. You've heard the advice before, but maintaining a healthy weight combined with consistent exercise up to age 70 will give you a 54% chance of making it to 90.
Weight control is critical. Can't be overweight. Exercise is critical. Making sure you don't have diabetes or even close to that. Making sure the blood pressure is acceptable and not smoking. If you control all 5 of those risk factors, you've got that 54%.
And that's not too far off from celebrating as many birthdays as Frank Fogarty, who was happy to share one of his secrets to living beyond 100.
Scotch and the rocks and a cigar before you go to bed, that helps.
Make that a good sense of humor and plenty of friends to share it with.
Thank you. Hello there. I'm Dr. Matthew Chan, the new medical director of the Occupational Medicine Center at Glendale Adventist Medical Center, and I'm here today to give you a health tip. The current recommendation is that we get anywhere between 20 and 30 minutes of exercise per day, about 3 days per week. That has been found to demonstrate benefits in the areas of cardiovascular disease, musculoskeletal health, and overall happiness and job satisfaction. And the good news is you don't have to do 30 consecutive minutes. You can actually break it up. So for example, I can go to work and exercise for 10 minutes quickly here on my break, and then do another 10 minutes later on in the afternoon, and when I get home, I can go for a quick 10-minute brisk walk. There, I've just accumulated 30 minutes in one day, and I didn't really have to go to the gym or set aside a significant amount of time to do so. And I can do that as many days of the week as possible. Just that amount of exercise alone will improve your health by leaps and bounds. And you'll notice an effect not only at home, but at work, and you'll be able to work healthy so that you can live the most abundant life possible.
The plant-based nature of the diet may trump the caloric restriction, though, since the one population that lives even longer than the Okinawa Japanese don't just eat a 98% meat-free diet, they eat 100% meat-free. The Adventist vegetarians in California, with perhaps the highest life expectancy of any formally described population. Adventist vegetarian men and women live to be about 83 and 86, comparable to Okinawan women, but better than Okinawan men. The best of the best were Adventist vegetarians who had healthy lifestyles too, like exercising non-smokers, 87 and nearly 90 on average. That's like 10 to 14 years longer than the general population. 10 to 14 extra years on this earth from simple lifestyle choices. And this is happening now, in modern times, whereas Okinawan longevity is now a thing of the past.
Today, if you've been watching the media, listening to the news and so on, there's been a lot of information on health-related issues such as cancer, exercising, and even fasting. And what modern research is now showing and proving through statistics is confirming what Ellen White spoke about in the 1800s, confirming that what she spoke about is actually true. Now, it's not that we need modern science to prove it. You know, for me personally, I know without a doubt that Ellen White was a prophet. The Bible proves that. But I just find it so amazing and so interesting to see how the things that she spoke about, which many even thought was ridiculous back in that time, is actually being fulfilled today. So I just want to highlight in this video, short video I hope, is show how the research that's come out today and show how it confirms what Ellen White spoke about many years ago. And I believe Ellen White had her first vision in relation to health in about 1863. So 100 years or so have lapsed, and it's interesting to see how what she spoke about is being proven and shown today. Now, the first thing that caught my attention, this was actually, I think it was Wednesday when I was on the train to work, and I saw a headline. You know, someone was reading the newspaper, the Sun newspaper, from one of them tablets, and the headline was, "Walking is the best exercise." And it was all over the media earlier this week, and I thought, wow, that's interesting, because Ellen White told us this over 100 years ago. Now, note what she says. She tells us, walking in all cases where it is possible is the best remedy for diseased bodies, because in this exercise, all the organs of the body are brought into use. There is no exercise that can take the place of walking. By it, the circulation of the blood is greatly improved. So what's the best exercise? Walking. What's modern research telling us today? That walking is the best exercise. Now, as well as walking, it's also important that we also work and strengthen our muscles. You know, as Seventh-day Adventists, we are supposed to be the light of the world. And it's not just in like prophecies even though they're important, this channel is basically focused on Bible prophecy, but I also want to be balanced and show that we're also supposed to be a light in our lives in regards to the health message, you know, because the health message is the entering wedge. Christ spent more time healing than preaching. Not that preaching is not important, but it's important that we bear that in mind and have the correct balance, because we really fall short, even in present truth, in regards to the health message. So it's important that we not only just speak about it, but we also be an example to the world in regards to the health message, because it truly is the entering wedge. Another important thing I want to talk about, and I've done a few of these videos in the past, but it's on exercise and muscle strength and cardiovascular exercise. Now we live in a polluted world today. I mean, the world is not the same, and one of the best ways in which you can rid your body from toxins is to exercise. It's to strengthen those muscles, and it's so important. And it's always hard getting into it in the beginning. If you've been lazy, you haven't worked your muscles for a number of years, it's hard getting into it. But once you get into it, you really do feel the benefits. And I want to read a comment from the Spirit of Prophecy. Well, Ellen White talks about muscle strength and exercise, and she tells us, those who are feeble and indolent should not yield to the inclination to be inactive, thus depriving themselves of air and sunlight, but should practice exercising out of doors, in walking or working in the garden. They will become very much fatigued, but this will not injure them. It is not good policy to give up the use of certain muscles because pain is felt when they are exercised. The pain is frequently caused by the effort of nature to give life and vigour to those parts that have become partially lifeless through inaction. The motion of these long disused muscles will cause pain because nature is awakening them to life. So if you're feeling pain when you start to exercise, it's not a bad thing. It's just the muscles now becoming awakened to life. Now, one of the things which I was not always good at was working on my stomach, abs or arm strength, and when I started to work these muscles, it was tough. It used to hurt, but now it doesn't hurt anymore, and I'm now feeling much stronger, like being able to carry heavy stuff, you know, with my arms, and being able to do push-ups. And you know, my stomach was the worst, and I hated working my stomach. I still hate it today, doing my abs. But, you know, now I'm feeling the benefits, and it's important. And this was where I fell into a bad habit, and that was where I would only work certain muscles because I enjoyed it, whether it be walking, running, cycling, and I'll neglect upper body strength. And I read another statement from the Spirit of Prophecy which said that we shouldn't do that. We need to work every muscle. Every muscle needs to be worked. So getting the hang of it, getting into it can be a bit difficult, but once you do get into it, you know, it really is a blessing. And exercise, you know, this is a statement I found, and it tells us daily exercise like walking, cycling, swimming, gardening, outdoor games for 30 to 40 minutes release endorphins and will help to reduce triglyceride levels. They also help to reduce cholesterol and reduce overweight. So exercise, I mean, it balances the mind, it keeps you more positive. It doesn't do well for us just to lock ourselves in a room, you know, and just study. You know, that's not balanced. And the Pen of Inspiration tells us that it actually affects the brain in a negative way if you continue to do that all the time. So we really need to be balanced, and you really need to, if we don't do so, get out there and start moving the muscles. Start off with something you enjoy, a form of exercise that you enjoy. Me personally, I absolutely love cycling. I actually value my bike more than my car, interestingly enough. And when I started cycling, I was terrible. I was awful. But once I've got into it, I've been doing it for a few years, it's a piece of cake. You know, cycling to work, I can do 30 miles a day, no problem. And it's just nice just being strong and healthy, and also being a witness as well, in particular to the diet that I have, i.e. plant-based, no meat or dairy. Many people don't really believe that's a healthy diet. But if you're an example and you're showing, yeah, okay, let's have our blood test, you know, my blood test is, you know, more positive than a lot of the other meat eaters. Let's have our blood pressure. My blood pressure is more positive than the other. Let's do some endurance exercises. Grace tends to go the longest, if you get what I mean. So it's been an example in my diet, which is so important to show people, you know, this is the way. I would not be able to do a lot of the things that I'm doing now if I was eating the way I was before. So it's been an example and educating people on health. So I'm hoping that will encourage you all watching this video, especially if you don't do much active exercise, to get out there and do more stuff, that you may be a witness and help others who are also struggling with their health. Now, another interesting thing that's hit the media recently, and that has been on fasting. And there's been some scientific studies that showed how fasting can regenerate the entire immune system. That's just fasting for 3 days can regenerate the entire immune system. And it's also known to help with aging as well, and many other things like prolong life. So fasting is very important. And lo and behold, Ellen White also talks about this in her book. And she tells us many times a short period of entire abstinence from food followed by simple moderate eating has led to recovery through nature's own recuperative effort. An abstemious diet for a month or two would convince many sufferers that the path of self-denial is the path to health. So fasting for a short period of time, whether it be 2 days, 3 days, it really helps the body. Why? Because as soon as the body, I mean, it takes a lot of effort to digest food. I mean, I think they say up to 60 or 70% of the body's energy can be used in digestion and breaking down food. However, when you stop and give your body a rest, what your body automatically starts to do is cleanse itself. It starts to eradicate all the toxins and the diseased muscles. And you know, many are also talking about how cancer, you know, fasting also helps cancer tumours and helps a number of different ailments and illnesses people have. So fasting, you know, can be really positive. But I'd say the best fast is to abstain from everything that's harmful from the body. That's where you're truly going to feel the benefits. But we do live in a corrupt world. The food is not the same as it is before. And if you can, it's highly recommended that you just give your body a rest and let it heal, and then get back into moderate eating. And in another video in relation to health, hopefully I want to talk about cleansings as well, the different kinds of cleanses a body can do. And I'll be doing it based upon my experience. I've done so many cleanses, you know, because sometimes even though you may move to a clean diet, you still might not feel so good. So it's important to do cleanses, you know, to help the body heal faster, heal and regenerate itself faster, whether it be water cleanse, juice cleanse, parasite cleanse, liver cleanse, and hopefully in another video I'll get the time to talk about it. And finally, another headline news, which was about 2 weeks ago, about a week ago, and that was on meat. Processed meat causes cancer, and to be honest, majority of meat out there today is processed. The meat is not the same, and it's been shown how it causes cancer. Now, should this surprise us, we who call ourselves Seventh-day Adventists? No, because Ellen White already told us this. We are told flesh was never the best food, but its use is now doubly objectionable since disease in animals is so rapidly increasing. Those who use flesh foods little know what they are eating. Often, if they could see the animal when living and know the quality of the meat they eat, they will turn from it with loathing. People are continually eating flesh that is filled with tuberculosis and cancerous germs. Tuberculosis, cancer and other fatal diseases are thus communicated. The effects of a flesh diet may not be immediately realized, but this is no evidence that it is not harmful. Few can be made to believe that it is the meat they have eaten which has poisoned their blood and caused their suffering. Many die of diseases wholly due to meat eating, while the real cause is not suspected by themselves or by others. And that's so interesting to see what's now being publicized in the news today.
A major new report from the World Health Organization says eating processed meat poses the same cancer risk as smoking. The report puts processed meats such as bacon and hot dogs at the highest risk rating. That is the same as cigarettes and alcohol. Red meat is called the next highest risk. The North American.
And it truly shows us that we have a sure word of prophecy and why we can trust in the writings of Mrs. Ellen White, who many believe was a false prophet. But I hope you can now see the urgency that, you know, the time is to do away with eating animals. Anything from an animal, even the milk and the eggs, is not the same anymore. And as we're preparing for translation, if we believe we're in the latter days, we need to be going back to the original diet that God gave us in Eden. The natural, pure, wholesome diet that will do a whole world of good for our minds and for our health, and will help us keep us balanced. Also, speaking about flesh eating, the prophet tells us, flesh food is injurious to health, and whatever affects the body has a corresponding effect to the mind and the soul. Think of the cruelty to animals that meat eating involves, and its effect on those who inflict and those who behold it, how it destroys the tenderness with which we should regard these creatures of God. The intelligence displayed by many dumb animals approaches so closely to human intelligence that it is a mystery. The animals see and hear and love and fear and suffer. They use their organs far more faithfully than many human beings use theirs. They manifest sympathy and tenderness towards their companions in suffering. Many animals show an affection for those who have charge of them, far superior to the affection shown by some of the human race. They form attachments for men which are not broken without great suffering to them. And dogs are a prime example. They say a man's best friend is a dog. Many who own dogs say they find their dogs to be more loyal than their human companions. And it's interesting, and in Proverbs the Lord tells us that a righteous man careth for his beast. We are not to treat animals with cruelty. And today, the way animals are being treated today, even the food that we eat, even with the food that many eat, you know, the meat, the eggs, and even with the clothes that we wear and that come from the animals, the suffering that the animal endured, you know, for us to even wear those clothes, or even for many to even eat that food. I mean, it's not in God's order. It's really awful, and we need to be aware of those things. Now, as I've been thinking about this, you know, it brought me back to, you know, the sacrificial system where they used to sacrifice animal. And we know the first animal that died, you know, was a lamb. If you study the book of Genesis, Adam had to kill a lamb, which was a type for Christ, and Christ clothed them with the animal's skins. I think I've covered that in the previous presentation. But the reason why God allowed that to happen was to show the horrendousness and the evilness of sin, and how it would lead, how it led to the Son of God being crucified. But we somehow have lost that connection. We are so fallen that we've seemed to have just lost touch with our emotions. I mean, can you just picture how they must have felt having to kill that animal, you know, killing those animals? And God did it, allow them to do that, was just to show the horrendousness of sin. But sadly, they ritualized that whole sacred ordinance. And when you ritualize something, you lose the essence, its focus. And yeah, I mean, it's quite sad when you look at the footage of the way animals are treated. It's just awful and it's evil. And we really shouldn't, I don't believe we should allow ourselves to partake in that. Now, let me make it clear, it's not about being fanatical. There are people in different parts of the world, you know, who may not have access to certain things that we do, and may have to eat certain things. Every situation is different. I don't believe everything is black and white. But we who are in the West today should know better, you know, and we who have access to a whole wide range of foods should know better. And God will always provide the best if we desire to have the best. And there's a solemn statement where the pen of inspiration tells us that those who are still question the meat-eating issue will fall away from the truth, the present truth. So just be aware of that. So it's just a short video this was just to talk about health and what's happening today in the news and how we need to be on guard. I also want to close with this statement from Ellen White, and I admire her faith and understanding the work which God gave her to do. And she tells us, abundant light has been given to our people in these last days. Light has been given to us, brothers and sisters. Whether or not my life is spared, my writings will constantly speak, and their work will go forward as long as time shall last. Isn't that true today? It truly is. My writings are kept on file in the office, and even though I should not live, these words that have been given to me by the Lord will still have life and will speak to the people. But my strength is yet spared, and I hope to continue to do much useful work. I may live until the coming of the Lord, but if I should not, I trust it may be said of me, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord, from henceforth, yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labours, and their works do follow them. Revelation 14:13. I thank God for the assurance of his love, and that I have daily his
Washington State has a history of large earthquakes. More than 1,000 earthquakes are registered in Washington State each year. In an earthquake, non-structural elements, which is anything that does not actually hold the building up, may become unhooked, dislodged, thrown about, and tipped over. This can cause extensive damage, interruption of operations, injuries, and even death. By taking action now, you can prevent injuries, save lives, and reduce the damage caused by earthquakes and other geologic hazards. Non-structural hazards can often be very easy and inexpensive to remedy. Positioning furniture differently in the room, bolting heavy and tall furniture to the walls, and removing dangerous and heavy items from top shelves are all possible fixes. Use your safety committee, emergency response teams, and maintenance personnel to identify and reduce or eliminate hazards. Focus on those hazards that represent the greatest life safety threat.
Okay, so I think that this will probably fall in front of the door. Can we move it over here?
Let's start by moving any heavy furniture or equipment that may move and block exits. Ken Urey from Emergency Supply Center will help with installing hardware and other non-structural procedures. Computers and monitors should be secured with seismic buckles, earthquake matting, or other earthquake restraining devices. Tall bookcases or other heavy furniture should be secured to the wall using approved fastening techniques. Wall-mounted objects over 5 pounds, such as monitors or televisions, should be connected to structural framing. File cabinets should be secured to the wall. Drawers should remain locked when not in use. If the drawers are unlocked, they can become projectiles. Wall decorations and pictures should be securely attached to the walls using recommended methods. Here, we're using a picture snap with Velcro corners. Closed eye hooks or wire could also be used. Potted plants or other heavy items should be properly secured with Velcro or guardrails. Hanging plants or mobiles should be well secured with wire loops or closed eye hooks. AV equipment, such as monitors, video players, radios, speakers, and so on, should be securely anchored with heavy-duty Velcro, earthquake matting, or seismic buckles.
Hey, Roger, what we're going to be doing today is taking your monitor, since you have all these windows here, and the glass could blow in on you and give you cuts and injuries, we're going to move you to a safer location away from the window.
Oh, I see.
Desks should also be moved away from windows in case they fracture during a quake. Or shatter-resistant film should be put on the glass to prevent broken pieces from flying about. Fragile objects should be attached to surfaces using either earthquake putty or museum wax, or placed on earthquake mats to reduce damage or injury.
Okay, let's go ahead and take the high objects down so they don't hurt anybody.
Okay, I'll take this one.
Heavy objects should be moved from overhead cabinets or storage areas. Rolling carts should have their wheels locked. Bookcases should have bungee cords or guardrails to keep books from tumbling off the shelves.
How many of these we're going to print once we know what our budget.
Remember, when the ground starts to shake, do not run. Drop, cover, and hold under a desk or heavy piece of furniture. Remain under the desk until the shaking stops. Every person should have a supply kit containing water, non-perishable first aid supplies, heavy-duty trash bags, a whistle, a flashlight or light sticks, heavy gloves, a battery-operated radio, and extra batteries. Prepare because you care. For more information, call your local emergency management office or Washington State Emergency Management at 1-800-562-6108.
Preparing for an earthquake. Many of us live in earthquake country, and if we live in places with earthquakes, we should be ready for them. When is that earthquake coming? Well, if anyone tells you that there's going to be a large earthquake next week at 7 p.m., you should be very, very skeptical. Scientists cannot predict the actual date of an earthquake. The best we can do is predict the probability. And there is a high probability that there will be a 6.7 or greater earthquake in the next 30 years. There's almost certain to be a 6.7, but very likely to be a 7.5. Now that's the kind of earthquake you should be prepared for. How do you prepare? You secure your house, you collect earthquake supplies, you make a plan of what to do during an earthquake, you practice it, and plan what to do after the earthquake. You might have heard of the Triangle of Life. It's a suggestion by Doug Kopp about what to do during an earthquake. Unfortunately, his suggestions are off the mark and downright dangerous. If you want a good source of what to do before and after an earthquake, go to the Red Cross or go to FEMA. I did to create this podcast. First, you want to secure your house. Houses in United States, California especially, are built to a high building code. Perhaps not as stringent as the building codes in Japan, but they're still very good. Most houses will do just fine during an earthquake. They should, however, be secured to their foundation. You can bolt and brace water heaters and gas appliances, and bolt tall, heavy furniture to wall studs. And look, where are your shelves and pictures and mirrors located? Do you have heavy trophies above your bed? Mirrors that can break? Rearrange your house in a way that these things won't fall down where people spend their time. Where's your bed? If it's next to the window, is there some better place to put it? You can install strong latches and bolts on your cabinets, and here's a simple thing. When you put things in the cabinets, put the heaviest ones near the floor. One important thing to do is to find out where your gas meter is and show everyone in your family how to shut it off. Also, have a wrench handy so that it can be done quickly. We can expect that we will be without help for at least 3 days. The firemen, the policemen, they're going to be busy. So you've got to be able to take care of yourself and don't expect that you'll have any electricity. One of the most important things that you can have supplied is water. You need about 1 gallon of water per person per day. It's easy to buy these big 5-gallon jugs. Non-perishable food, flashlights and extra batteries. And where do you keep them? Well, next to the bed, of course. Because that earthquake is likely to happen in the middle of the night. With no light, you're going to want the flashlight, and you're going to want to put on shoes or slippers. There might be a lot of glass on the floor, so have some shoes under your bed. Medical supplies and first aid, of course, is very important. You might want a battery-powered or hand-cranked radio. They're easy to find. Water will need to be sterilized, so liquid bleach does that very well. A few drops in the water until you can just barely smell the bleach. Wait 30 minutes, and it should be safe. Hygiene. There's not going to be water coming out of the tap to wash your hands with, so it might be a good idea to have plenty of hand sanitizer around. Oh, speaking of that, you may not have a toilet working, so having plenty of plastic bags for a makeshift toilet is a good idea. I know, it's icky. Get over it. Extra cash. Don't expect ATMs to be up and working anytime soon. So if you want to buy stuff without looting, please have your own cash. It's a great idea to put these supplies in your car. Also in your car, you might want an emergency blanket for warmth. This is something your entire family should discuss. Where will you meet after the earthquake? Please understand that school must take attendance before releasing any students. So students should never consider just going home even if they're within walking distance. They must have their attendance taken, and parents will have to wait. Our phones may or may not be working. Landline receivers will be off their sets. So it's going to be hard to get calls out. It's a great idea to decide upon an out-of-state contact. We don't know if cell phones will be working or not. So consider the possibility that your cell phone may not work. However, if you have cousins in New York, you might want to decide that the entire family calls them and they can relay information back and forth. It will be much easier to get a hold of somebody out of state than somebody in the earthquake-prone area. Your cell phone might not work, but at least you could look up the number on your cell phone. When the earthquake happens, the drill is simple. Duck, cover, and hold. Duck and cover underneath a table or a desk, and hold because that desk is going to start shaking with you under it. If you don't have a table, find an inside wall. They're much less likely to collapse than an outside wall. Cover your head. I assume that's the most important part of your body. Keep your head lower than the furniture. So, for example, if you wake up in the middle of the night in an earthquake and there's no desk to go under, then get beside your bed, lower than your bed, and put your pillow over your head. Please don't panic and run outside. Statistically speaking, you're much more likely to get hit by something as you exit a building. What if you're in your car during the earthquake? Great, good place to be. Just pull over. Of course, you want to avoid overpasses and underpasses for obvious reasons. If you're outside, that's a wonderful place to be. Nothing's going to fall on you. But do be careful of downed power lines. You cannot touch a downed power line or anything that it touches. And if somebody else makes the mistake of touching it, you cannot help them. After the earthquake, go outside. After a big earthquake, there will be aftershocks. And they may loosen some part of the building that had not fallen during the first earthquake. You might want to check utilities if you're home. If you smell gas, turn off the gas valve, open windows, and stay outside until the gas company has told you if it's safe or not. So, are you prepared? Well, if you haven't prepared yet, there's still time. I'd like to show you something that certainly has encouraged me to be prepared. This is an animation made by the Southern California Earthquake Center. This 7.8 earthquake might begin on the southernmost section of the San Andreas Fault down by the Salton Sea. I've put the cursor over by Los Angeles, so at this point, the waves have not hit Los Angeles. If we're lucky, by the time this happens, we might have an early warning system, giving us as much as a minute warning. That would be really, really useful. An earthquake doesn't happen along a fault all at once. It rips up a fault. The longer the fault, the bigger the earthquake. Also, the amount of shaking that goes on is not just a result of how close you are to the fault, but also to the kind of soil that you're on. Notice that the valleys and the basins shake more than the mountains. At this point, San Bernardino is experiencing great shaking as it goes beyond San Bernardino toward Palmdale and Lancaster. Finally, the shaking is starting to hit the Los Angeles area. Notice it's about 1:20 into the earthquake. For the next half minute, we're going to be experiencing a great amount of shaking. fault has stopped moving, but the shaking continues. Now that's an earthquake that I don't want to see, but I'm afraid it's one of the more likely scenarios. Even if we manage to avoid that earthquake, we're likely to encounter some earthquake in the near future. And if we're prepared for an earthquake, hey, we're prepared for floods, tornadoes, terrorist attack, alien invasions, hurricanes, who knows? So it's always a good idea to be prepared.
Hanna-Barbera presents Yogi, spokesbear for earthquake preparedness.
Wiggle, 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 shake, shake, jiggle, 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 quake, quake.
Hey, if there's a quake, be prepared for safety's sake.
Right, Yogi. And being prepared means preparing for an earthquake before, during, and after it happens.
Take it from the smarter than the average bear. That's good advice. And speaking of advice, to be quake safe, try you-know-who's Preparedness kit.
Right again, Yogi. That kit holds some of the bare necessities of being earthquake safe. Flashlight, transistor radio, extra batteries, fire extinguisher, whistle, first aid kit, tissues, large plastic bags, aluminum foil, blankets, canned or packaged foods and juices, bottled water, paper cups, plastic spoons, and special family needs should be included.
And don't forget this, Mr. Narrator, a crescent wrench.
Right on, Yogi. It's also important that parents locate and learn how to shut off the water, gas, and electricity in case of an emergency.
Your friendly gas, water, or power company can assist you in this.
Electricity can be switched off by either a fuse box or a circuit breaker. The gas shutoff valve is located on the inlet gas pipe entering the meter. Turn the slot valve a quarter turn so it runs crosswise on the pipe. The line is now closed, although the main shutoff valve for water is out by the curb in a concrete box. You can shut the water off at the master valve, where it enters the house.
And now that we're all prepared on the outside, let's check out the indoors.
For safety in the home, things that could slide, crash, or fall should all be fixed to the floor or wall.
Right! Yeah, don't forget a rope or leash to hold your pet.
It's also very important that every family should have plans to evacuate and reunite in case they become separated during a quake.
Hey, how's about a two-sided window sign that alert your neighbors that you're okay?
Speaking of neighbors, Yogi, parents should get involved in a neighborhood safety watch program.
Because, and I quote, with neighbor helping neighbor, a plan for preparedness saves lives and property.
Now that you're prepared for before a quake, here's what to do during the shaking and the quaking. If indoors, get under a table with your head covered, or in a doorway with your head down and arms braced. Stay away from windows and mirrors, fireplaces, bookcases, or tall cabinets. At school, when your teacher calls drop, get under your desk. Cover your head with your hands and arms. If you're outside during an earthquake, stay away from buildings. Avoid trees and stay clear of walls and power lines. And remember, during a quake, the best way to handle scared is to be prepared. Keep calm. Don't panic. After an earthquake, be prepared for some aftershocks. Don't be alarmed. It's nature's way of settling down.
Now here's some more tips for you. The after-earthquake things to do. If you're at school and it's a major quake, stay there for safety's sake.
Your teacher will take care of you until it's safe or until your parents come and get you. At home, listen to the radio for news reports. Use phones only for emergencies. And stay put.
Check for safety. For fire hazards like downed utility lines or damaged appliances.
Check for gas leaks by smell. Not with a match. Use only bottled drinking water until tap water is safe to use. Speaking of safety, be sure to wear shoes, as Yogi's doing, to protect your bare feet. Finally, to make sure nothing else is missing, make a handy home checklist.
When you do, you know who will be smarter than your average Be Prepared bear? Hey, you!
So we're here in the shake trailer, which simulates an earthquake of different magnitudes, and the whole point of this is to give people an idea of what it feels like to be in an earthquake. And we bring this out to different locations, and Dawn, you haven't been in this yet, but it'll be interesting to see what it's like, because you never know, earthquakes could happen at any moment. You don't know. So we did exactly what we're supposed to do. That's drop, cover, and hold on. And what did you think of that?
It's pretty wild. You don't, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of movement, and I could definitely feel the things falling on top. So, yeah.
Right, and so what we found is that a lot of times in earthquakes, you think that a building is going to collapse on you, and that's your biggest chance of getting injured. The reality is that most injuries occur from stuff falling. So that's unsecured items like we see here. You've got all these books and things that can hit you in the head. You could have a big flat panel television come down. You could have, you know, maybe a coffee pot or something off of the top of your refrigerator. So there's a lot of things that could cause an injury. So we tell people and we teach them, when the shaking starts, you drop, cover, and hold on. And if you can, get underneath something. And like this case, we can't get under the couch. So it's just drop, cover your head, and hold on until the shaking stops. There's always a chance for aftershocks. You should be aware of that. And then after the shaking stops, that's when you take the steps of deciding if you're going to evacuate or what you're going to do. Maybe to shut off the gas because the gas main's now leaking. So
it was a pretty wild first experience for me, so I have to say, you know, being new to California, that was my first time of even having something simulated that, and it is definitely an experience of just even trying to get down to the ground, and, yeah, it's a very interesting experience, so glad I had the opportunity.
All right, well that's the shake trailer, and in the next segment we're going to be talking about what you should put in your emergency preparedness kit. So we're here in downtown Sacramento where we're doing a demonstration for people on what it's like to be in an earthquake, and we're also teaching people what you need to do to prepare yourself for an earthquake or any kind of disaster. Joining me is Dawn Lindblom with American Red Cross here. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you.
So what we want to find out is what is it we need to put in our kit that we would use in a disaster?
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting, there's some really basic items that you want to have to be ready for an event. So some of the things would be like having a flashlight, extra batteries for the one, and spares to have if something happens. Things like making sure you have a 3-day supply of water. Usually our general recommendation is a gallon of water per person per day.
Well, that's important to know.
Absolutely. Non-perishable food items, so something canned goods type of thing, and make sure you have your can opener.
Yeah, that's really key. I know a lot of people are like, well, if you're going to be in your car and stranded somewhere or whatever, and you've got cans, how do you get in them, right?
Exactly.
That's really clever.
Another thing is just some of the things that we don't always think about, and we see this all the time at the Red Cross and emergency response, but make sure you have your prescription drugs, you know, have an extra supply on hand. And if you don't have that, have a copy of actually your prescription in and of itself, because that's another piece that, you know, we can get refills or do something like that, but have that in place. Some of the other items, if you have infants, having baby food and formula that's available and on hand. And another thing to think about is that, you know, you don't know in the event, you know, how much injuries or how people might get harmed during the event. So make sure in your kit that you have a first aid kit so that you can administer that if anything happens. And those
So
are
then
some
you
of
have
the
that.
basic items.
So in here, like, so here's like a little tiny first aid kit, and it doesn't have to be a big fancy one. You don't have to get something that's cost you $50 or $100.
No,
Just
it
be.
can just be a really basic one. It doesn't have to be like you said, anything too huge. I think
Toilet paper.
Toilet paper could be a handy item to have.
You know, and people laugh about that, but it's true. You never know when you're going to get stuck, and you may need that, right?
It is important to have. I think some other things, you know, a spare set of keys in case you need that access to your home or to that sort of
Oh, I
thing.
didn't think about that, right.
So a lot of good things that you can have. People can go actually to our website to find a full list of the type of items that you want to do to make your own kit. And it really doesn't take a lot of effort. Even if you do it as a family, for example, you could do one item per month or 1 week per month. Just pick it up when you do your regular grocery store run. And it's a good thing to have, you know, in the event of any type of disaster or emergency that you're ready to go.
And that's great. These are great tips. And it doesn't have to be expensive. You could just go around your house and just pick some things and put it in a bag and have it ready to go for whatever the disaster may be.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thanks, Don. Thanks for showing us. And if you want more information, you can go to the American Red Cross website, which is
www.redcrosscrc.org.
And then we also have totallyunprepared.com, which is a place you can see some videos and some other ways in which you can prepare yourself and your house and secure your items if you're going to be in an area where there might be an earthquake, which is basically all of California. Thanks for joining us.
With the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services, and today I'm excited to be here with Hillary Anderson. Hi.
Hi. My name is Hillary. I'm the Manager of Preparedness and Resiliency at the American Red Cross Los Angeles region, and I'm really excited about teaching you guys what to do during the next earthquake. So are we ready for this?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right.
Today we're going to talk about the 3 secret tips on being better prepared, why it's important to be prepared, and some of the essentials that you need for your kit. So today we're going to talk a little bit about that. Thank you for being here, Hillary. It's nice to meet you.
Thank you for having me. So I'd like to start by telling you a little bit about the Red Cross. We respond to about 70,000 disasters a year on average, which really for us counteracts the myth and the most denials that we face, which are that it's not going to happen to me and it's not going to happen here. With 70,000 disasters a year, it's definitely happening here. And there are 3 secrets to getting prepared for the Red Cross. That's get a kit, make a plan, and be informed. And being informed really means knowing what your risks are. What we learned from the Northridge earthquake, which we're coming up on 20 years here, is that 55% of injuries were the direct result of flying objects and debris. Only 1% of injuries were actually from building collapse. So what we want people to do is prepare for the most likely things to happen to them.
So tell us a little bit about what you have today.
All right. So we've got 2 different types of kits. One is our personal kit. That's our grab and go kit. It's a sturdy container. It's enough supplies for 3 days for 1 person. You'll see car specific pieces here. I've got jumper cables, road maps, water, sturdy pair of shoes, and I also have things for my dog. I'm a pet owner. I want to make sure that she's okay in the next emergency too. Those are some basic essentials. Then you see our family supplies kit. This is enough supplies for every member of your family for starting with 3 days and building up to 2 weeks. You'll find food, water, medications, and first aid equipment, as well as multi-tools, batteries, flashlights, a radio, a hard hat, because it's no joke, flying objects absolutely will happen in the next earthquake, and you've got comfort items as well. So plan for your family and their special needs on top of that.
Great. Well, that's a lot of information, and we're so excited that you were able to be here with us and to share this with us. I think it's so important that we are able to be prepared before, during, and after disaster. And for more information, please visit www.caloes.ca.gov.
And for more information on how to build that kit, make your family communications plan, and be informed, visit redcross.org. And when the next earthquake strikes, we want you to drop, cover, and hold on.
hurricane season has officially begun, but everyone, no matter where they live, needs to prepare for a disaster. We've had record flooding, tornadoes, and disasters in all parts of the country this year. But there are 4 simple things that everyone can do to protect themselves. First, you want to review your insurance. You want to make sure you have enough insurance to completely rebuild your home and replace all of your personal possessions. The second thing is you want to ask about flood and earthquake insurance, because while a standard home and renter's insurance policy will provide coverage for things like a hurricane, a windstorm, a tornado, you're not going to be covered for flooding or for an earthquake. You're going to need to get separate insurance for these types of disasters. The third thing is you need to conduct a home inventory. This is a simple list of all your personal possessions with their estimated value. This makes buying the right amount of insurance much easier, as well as filing a claim. And the Insurance Information Institute has free web-based software to make this process as easy as possible. And lastly, you need to have an evacuation plan. This is going to include knowing where you're going to go and what you're going to take with you. And if you have pets or the elderly in your family, take a little bit of extra time now to think about what you're going to do with them in an evacuation.
Okay, frequently during a flooding event, it's important for us to be thinking about the propane tank that might be sitting outside of the house. And there are some things that we need to think about long in advance, and other things that we need to be thinking about if a flood event is imminent. And we're at a propane tank here today, and the first thing that we're going to look at is that if we're expecting a flood event to occur, we probably should be looking at filling the tank, because that full tank will weigh more and will be more secure than if we had an empty tank. In essence, with an empty tank, we just have a cork or bobber that's going to float away. And so as we look at a propane tank, typically we'll have a lid similar to this, and so you just lift that up, and there will be a gauge that will indicate what percentage of fill occurs in this tank. We would want to look at trying to have that tank filled well in advance of the flood event if we are able to know that a flood might be imminent. The reason for that is that frequently we'll get into a situation where roads may become impassable, or for other reasons, it's just a supply and demand issue sometimes, whether they can get to your tank and have it filled. So this would be one thing to look at in advance. The next thing would be to make sure that you know how to shut off the fuel. If a flooding is going to occur, then we'll want to come into a tank and close the valve so that we don't have the potential of the propane coming out of that tank in a flood event. And as most valves, you would turn clockwise or to the right to shut that down. You turn it left to open, just like you would any other type of valve or anything, even a jar, as you're opening it. One other thing to consider, again, maybe in advance of that flood event, is to look at how we have this tank anchored, or do we need to have that tank anchored. And for a propane tank, typically it's going to look very similar to this one, where we'll have legs on the bottom, and ideal would be to put down a concrete pad that would have anchor bolts. Those anchor bolts would come through into the feet, and you would anchor it down that way. Other options that are shown are to put a strap over the top with anchors that are screwed into the ground. Of course, that would need to be done in advance, and one of the concerns with doing that is, do we end up with rusting or deterioration wherever those straps go over the tank? Another benefit of having the concrete there is that it's a nice heavy weight, and it will serve as a drain area to move the water away from the tank. If we don't have some kind of anchor or strap over that tank and flooding is imminent, we will want to try to tie it down in some way so it doesn't float away. Just a chain to something that is a permanent attached, whether it's a tree or something else, so that we make sure that this propane tank doesn't end up floating down the river. In this situation, what they have actually done is they have an earthen dike around the house, and that then gives us the opportunity to have the propane tank inside that diked area and protected from the flooding. If we put the tank to the outside, then of course we need to be anchoring it and being more concerned about that tank in a flood event.
It's important when you first come to the house that you haven't been in yet, you do a full walk around all the way outside of the entire house and look for structural damage to the house, because this one looks fine when we first come up to it, but as we further inspect it, if we didn't have this fire line tape here, we notice that the entire foundation behind these bushes is caved in from this corner all the way around the corner, and as we walk around we'll see more damage. This house is not structurally safe to go into. So as we walk around over to this corner, this porch, you can't see underneath it, but that foundation has gone underneath that, so that porch in its essence floating up above there, the supports might be gone from that porch too. And then over here, you can see straight through that house. You need to make sure to do that walk around first thing. The other thing to do when you do the walk around of the house is to look for the warning labels that might be on the windows and doors. You'll have to look around and see, depends on the type of the house, where they're going to post these. But for example here, the gas utility company has posted a warning what's done and with the information that you need, including phone numbers that you can contact them, as well as the electric company, what they've done, and contact phone numbers included. Also, the city fire department has come through in this particular house and labeled this house as unsafe to enter because of foundation issues on the outside. Another thing we want to look at, now we've already looked at this porch to make sure, we've looked underneath and around to make sure it's solid, but examples like this glass door that's caved in here, the homeowner might be tempted to walk into that glass, but easily one of these big shards of glass could come and just slice down anywhere on them. So just absolutely no way do you want to go in through these kind of openings there. As we're doing the initial walk around, the thing we want to look for too is to make sure the gas is off if there's gas service to the house, as well as electricity. And in this case, you can see that the gas company's been here where they've capped off. They've actually pulled the meter in this case. That won't always happen, but they've capped off the gas line coming in, and they've shut it off and sealed it to make sure it can't be turned back on, to make sure that valve is shut.
Being ready for a major disaster, it's no longer the realm of militiamen hidden in the mountains.
A shaky economy, recent catastrophes fueling this growing movement of soft-core survivalists who could be your next-door neighbors. 7 News reporter Jacqueline Allen introduces all of us to Colorado's Preppers Network. It's a story you'll see only on 7 News.
If there were ever a disaster in Frederick, Colorado,
from the outside looking in, nobody could really know.
This house is probably where you'd want to be.
Come tickle you.
Ron and Heather Douglas and their 6 children may seem carefree, but they are new members of a growing online network getting ready for the worst. They call themselves preppers.
Is this paranoid?
No.
We don't think so. We think we're very normal. But
Remember post-Hurricane Katrina? The government was criticized for not delivering food and water fast enough, even in Colorado.
a couple of years ago, we had 3-4 foot snow. People couldn't leave their house. We had neighbors that didn't have enough food for 3 days.
But the Douglases were preppers when preppers weren't cool. Starting with a 72-hour emergency kit for everyone in the family.
Granola bars, raisins.
Complete with food, water,
flashlight, glow stick,
and supplies for 3 days. For staying home,
This is our emergency water storage.
they have 3 months water supply, a year's worth of oil changes, and a winter's warmth for their wood-burning stove. The Douglas family has a food pantry to rival a grocery store. Enough food to feed 8 people for a year.
It can start as simple as just buying a few extra things at the grocery store when you're there.
They also stock up from their backyard garden.
I really like to can, and so when we can grow a lot of it ourselves, it makes it so they eat more nutritious food, and we also can put it up and save money.
All this prepping has already paid off.
I was out off-roading in our vehicle, and we got stuck. And I was way out there, and I had the whole family with me.
The car's emergency preparedness kit came in handy. The family camped while Dad hiked to get help.
I think it's our responsibility to be prepared for circumstances that happen in our lives.
They're no survivalists, they live in the suburbs, but they say the preppers movement is the reason they can feel carefree.
I think there's a sense of freedom that comes with being independent and relying upon yourself for things. I don't think it can come any other way.
In Frederick, Jacqueline Allen, 7 News.
Also recommend having a financial reserve, at least 3 months living expenses set aside in case you lose your job. For tips on creating your own food storage pantry and what you should include in your emergency supply kit, go to thedenverchannel.com.
Oh, hi. Welcome home. I'm Alan Foucault. Well, it sure is nice to finally get a taste of some spring weather. Sure felt like a long time coming. I've even seen a few crocuses starting to pop out. But you know, it was a tough winter. We had below normal temperatures. We had tons of snow. We saw all kinds of roof collapses this year. And now that it's spring, we've been looking at all these flooding conditions. This weather really drives home the point that having your home prepared for these emergencies is critical. Once an emergency situation develops, the time to prepare is gone. All you can do then is try to cope. And anything you can do now to prepare will feel like money in the bank. This is a portable generator. It's small, but it's powerful enough to run most critical home systems, such as a refrigerator or a furnace. These units range in price from a couple of $100s to several thousand for larger whole house systems. Buying a generator is only the first step. Electrical codes require that generators be installed with this device, called a transfer switch. It is attached to the home's electrical service panel and prevents both regular line voltage and generator power from ever being connected at the same time. Some homeowners try to backfeed generator power through a clothes dryer outlet. This is illegal and could potentially send dangerous voltage back to the lines on the street. With a simple flip of a transfer switch, generator power can be directed to the furnace, lights, or a sump pump. In fact, I bought my generator because of the sump pump. I was worried that the occasional basement flooding that we get here could become very serious if the pump was disabled by a power outage. It's also very important that you properly maintain your generator. You want to run the unit for at least 20 minutes every month to keep everything in good working order. Any fuel that's not used up after about 6 months really should be replaced with fresh. And ultimately, if you do end up needing to count on your generator for an extended period of time, you're going to have plenty of fuel on hand. Remember, if the power is out, you may not be able to get any more at the gas station either. There are a few other important things to remember. Floodwaters are often contaminated by septic system overflows. Boil all your well water for at least 10 minutes to assure its purity, and never allow the kids to play in the floodwater. Clean drinking water is essential for survival. A bathtub full of clean drinking water can maintain a family for days. Of course, you will want to keep a supply of canned foods for an emergency, but don't forget an old-fashioned hand-operated can opener. A good rule of thumb is to try to be prepared for at least 3 days of self-sufficient living. You'll sleep better knowing that your home is ready for the worst. For Havel Journal, I'm Alan Foucault, at home.
In this session, we are going to look at complex emergencies, a major form of public health disasters in the Eastern Africa region. Let us start by looking at this scenario. A certain district Y has been affected by a 10-year conflict in which over 200,000 people have been internally displaced and they live in camps. They cannot return to their homes for fear of the rebels. The living conditions and health status of people in these camps is very poor. This is an example of a complex emergency. What then is a complex emergency? A complex emergency is a deep social crisis in which large numbers of people die from war, displacement, and hunger owing to man-made disasters. This is a definition by Klugman. It is also defined as a humanitarian crisis with a breakdown in authority due to internal or external conflicts that requires international response. This definition is by the UN Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA. Characteristics of a complex emergency include violence and massive displacement of people, administrative, economic, and political collapse. It is long-lasting and widespread. That means it affects a large number of people. There is usually exploitation and worsening of existing differences in civil society, like economic differences, social differences, political differences, religious differences, and others. There is often dispute over legitimacy of authority, usually between government and other formal or informal groups like rebels, insurgents, etc. The vulnerable population is at greatest risk. Large-scale humanitarian assistance is often needed. There is usually hindrance of assistance by political or military forces, meaning that some groups that have power may prevent others from receiving assistance. Complex emergencies are usually political. They often result in catastrophic public health problems. Complex emergencies often include wars and civil strife, armed aggression, insurgency, and other actions resulting in displaced persons and refugees. They usually have a political undertone. Can you name some in your region? Look at these pictures and try to understand some of the effects of complex emergencies. Priority interventions in refugee or mass displacement of people situations. There is need for a rapid needs assessment. There is need to provide water and sanitation to affected people. There's need to provide food and nutrition to affected people, need to provide shelter and site planning, health care, control of communicable diseases, and coordination of the humanitarian response. What is involved in a rapid needs assessment? Health priorities are identified on the basis of rapid collection and analysis of data. Information is collected on background displacement, risk factors, resources required, etc. It is important to use a guideline based on standards. For instance, the SPHERE standards. Water and sanitation. Drinking water is a top priority in complex emergencies. Both quality and quantity are important. During the first days, 20 liters of water per person per day should be the target. Poor and inadequate water supply is associated with sanitation-related diseases. Sanitation. In the first days of displacement, emergency latrine should be provided for every 50 to 100 persons. But these should be improved to one latrine for 20 persons, and ideally one latrine per family when the conflict improves, or the situation improves, or the humanitarian situation is addressed. Food and nutrition. Population movement, both cause and consequence, is both a cause and a consequence of food shortage. Malnutrition is an important contributory cause of death during complex emergencies. Food distribution should be planned, effective, and equitable. Shelter and site planning is an important aspect of complex emergencies, especially where large numbers of people are displaced. Shelter is important for protection, security, privacy. It is recommended that each person has 3.5 square meters of available space for their personal use. Appropriate shelter sites should be selected. They should be in a secure location away from the border. Availability of land and access to water, and the location should be socially and culturally agreeable to the affected persons. Healthcare aims to reduce mortality in the emergency phase of displacement. Curative, preventive, and rehabilitative care is crucial. Manuals and guidelines should be available for standardization of treatment. A tier system of healthcare is important, that is hospital, health center, and outreach services. Determine human resource needs, recruit and train health workers, and place them where they are needed. Control of communicable diseases is very important during complex emergencies. Intervention strategies include attacking the sources of infection, like curative care, isolation of highly infectious persons. Prevent transmission of illness through environmental sanitation, personal hygiene, and health education. Protect the susceptible persons, like measles immunization, chemoprophylaxis for selected diseases, and provision of bed nets. There is need for continuous surveillance to detect epidemics and to assess effectiveness of interventions. Coordination is another vital part of management of complex emergencies. The rationale is that there are usually many actors involved in the response. The goal is to achieve the greatest impact through integration of activities. Establish clear leadership and coordination. Ensure priorities are shared between the intervening partners. Rationalize services by establishing common standards and ensure good communication among stakeholders.
You'll do anything to keep your loved ones safe. As a member of the NASA family, you owe it to them to prepare a workable safety plan in the event of a local or national emergency. Whether you're here at NASA, at home, or on the road, take stock of your emergency supplies. 1. For an on-site emergency, have an office flyaway kit stocked with breakfast bars, water, medicines, sensible walking shoes, and any items needed to sustain you for a reasonable amount of time. 2. At home, keep a 7-day supply of bottled water, easy-to-prepare foods, and other essentials needed during a prolonged disruption of services and utilities. Also, give extra attention to flashlights and batteries, weather radio, supplemental heating and cooking devices, plus tools for emergency repairs. Number 3. Your car should have a minimum of a half tank of fuel at all times. Maintain it with oil changes, proper tire inflation, and topped-off wiper fluid. A portable emergency kit should include blankets, toys and games for kids, and plenty of bottled water and snacks. Plan how you'll contact your family if you become separated. Designate an out-of-state contact everyone can tag up with by phone, text, or email. Reliable and up-to-date information may not be readily available, so use common sense in determining your situation and, wherever possible, closely monitor TV, radio, and the Internet. Should it be necessary to shelter in place at home, be ready to bring your family and pets inside. Lock doors, close windows, air vents, and fireplace dampers. Turn off fans, air conditioning, and forced air heating systems. Grab your emergency supply kit. Go into an interior room with few windows if possible. Circumstances may require leaving your home in a hurry, so plan where and how you and/or your family will go. In poor weather and travel conditions, you'll want options. Agree on several destinations, each in a different direction. But first, be prepared to meet at home or another prearranged location in or outside your immediate neighborhood. Turn off your water and gas lines. Know alternate evacuation routes, and especially if you don't have a car, learn another means of transportation out of your area. Grab your emergency supply kit. Lock the door behind you. Remember, your car should have at least a half tank of gas. Take your pets, but know that only service animals may be permitted in public shelters. Call or email your out-of-state contact and give them your destination and route. You've developed your plan, now it's time to get it ready. Make a list of everything you'll need for your emergency kits. Check off what you already have, then get to the store for the rest. When possible, buy extras like batteries, since some essentials might be in short supply at your destination. Don't wait, shop today. Your family's safety may depend on it. Of course, no plan will work unless everyone knows his or her role. Where do I go? Who do I meet? Make sure everyone knows what to do in each emergency scenario. Now that your family's familiar with its plan, it's time to practice it. Like astronauts who rehearse over and over and over again, you'll need to practice your family preparedness plan until it becomes second nature. To keep everyone fresh, hold monthly drills. If the unexpected should happen, everyone will be grateful you thought and planned ahead. So remember, 1. Pre-flight, know your stuff. 2. Know your mission, develop your plan. 3. Mission assurance, get prepared. 4. The launch, practice your plan. You'll feel more secure knowing you've done what you can to help keep your loved ones and our NASA family safe. For more detailed information, go to www.nasa.gov/HQ-emergency and click on the Personal Family Preparedness tab.
Floodwater threatens your property. Here are some sandbag dike tips that could save your home. A sandbag dike is the most widely used temporary homeowner protection against rising water. Following a few simple rules will help your sandbag dike achieve maximum strength and effectiveness. British Columbia has sandbagging machines deployed throughout the province. These machines can be transported easily and quickly on flatbed trailers to any point accessible by road or rail. They are capable of filling 5,000 bags an hour. While these machines are mobile, they aren't very suitable to move into a residential area. You should be prepared to fill your personal sandbags manually. Locate the sandbag dike on high ground, close to the building or improvement being protected. This will minimize the length and number of bags needed. Allow room for a strong, wide base. Dig a shallow trench, 1 sandbag deep and 2 sandbags wide, to provide a foundation for the dike. For maximum stability, the dike should be 3 times as wide as it is high. Therefore, if your sandbag dike is 1 meter high, it should be 3 meters wide at the base. If it's too narrow at the bottom, this could happen. Sandbags should never be more than half full. It is not necessary to tie them shut. Turn the flap end of the bag upstream. Spread and position the open end flap of the bag so it will be covered by another bag. This secures the sand and the bag. Place the bags at right angles in alternating layers. Be sure to stagger the rows by half a bag so the floodwater can't access a continuous seam to flow through. Walk on the bags to tamp them into place. Take care to avoid puncturing the bags. A sandbag dike should provide significant temporary protection for your home and possessions. However, if rising water forces you to leave your home, remember these precautions. Shut off all electrical power to the house. Shut off the gas supply at the valve. For oil-fired equipment, shut off the fuel line at the tank. Place a weight on top of the tank. For propane tanks, turn off the valve and secure it. Shut off the water supply. Plug all basement sewage connections. Pesticides, fertilizers, and other possible water polluters should be moved to higher levels. Gather a few necessary items to take with you, such as blankets, warm clothing, waterproof footwear, a flashlight, a battery-powered radio, any special medication, and your identification. Do not return home until Emergency Operations Headquarters announce that it is safe to do so. Keep in mind that most flood fatalities are associated with people in vehicles. Just over a half a meter of water can sweep a vehicle away. If your vehicle gets trapped in water, leave it and walk to higher ground. For more information, contact your local community emergency program.
Getting yourself and your family prepared in case of an emergency takes less time and effort than you may think. But if a disaster hits your community, having a plan for what to do and stocking up on some basic supplies can make all the difference in how safely and comfortably you make it through the crisis.
In case of a major emergency, if you call 911, we may not be able to come out as quickly as you'd like us because we're going to be overwhelmed. We're going to have so many different situations at hand. So if you are prepared at home and you have a plan, then you'll be able to cope with it until help arrives.
In an emergency, everything goes out the window. Your emotions, the fear factor, confusion. If everybody's aware of the plan and can execute the plan, that increases your survivability.
Take a few minutes to check out the tips and tools available on ready.gov that make getting prepared easy. There are a few basics. First, learn about the types of risks that could affect your area. No matter where you live, there is a natural or man-made disaster that could strike without warning. Knowing what to do before, during, and after these types of events ahead of time will help you make an effective plan. Then, take a moment to sit with your family and decide how you will get in contact with each other, where you will go, and what you will do in the event of an emergency.
Having a plan that everyone in the family is aware of can be very helpful in those situations where the family members are not in the same place.
You can use the Family Emergency Plan available on ready.gov to organize family information and help you develop a plan that works for you. Identify someone locally and someone out of state who will be your contact person in case of an emergency. And learn how to send updates via text messaging to your friends and family.
One of the things that we've noticed in the past during major emergencies, both the regular phone lines as well as the cell phone lines were overwhelmed. But people were still able to text message vital pieces of information in terms of location, nature of problem, or just to text to say all is well.
Once you've established your plan, print out a list available on ready.gov and start to put together an emergency kit. A standard emergency kit includes water, food, and medicine to sustain all members of your household for at least 3 days. Visit ready.gov for a complete list of suggested items, along with recommendations for how to prepare a family emergency plan. Even if you just add a few items at a time, very quickly you will have a great kit that will ensure you and your family are prepared for an emergency. Also, be sure to keep a copy of the emergency plan together with copies of important documents like birth certificates, insurance policies, and financial forms in your emergency supply kit. And don't forget to maintain your kit and plan throughout the year, replacing items prior to their expiration and keeping contact information current.
Remember that emergency preparedness is not something you can do once and forget about it. Make sure that you review your kit periodically, you update any medication or food and supplies, and also that you periodically review it with your family.
Inquire about emergency plans at places where your family spends time, like work, school, faith organizations, and recreational activities. Finally, get to know the local resources available in your community. Ready.gov can link you to local emergency information and contact numbers, information about sheltering and evacuation, and how to get local alerts and warnings. We can't predict where or when the next disaster will happen, but we do know that when the time comes, individuals and families who have taken even a few steps to prepare themselves will feel more confident and secure in their ability to get through it. Check out the information on ready.gov and get started today.